Good morning and welcome to the March 24th, 2022 Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting. If any member of the audience wishes to speak to an item on the agenda today, there are speaker request forms to the left of the dais. Please fill out the request with the agenda number of the item you wish to speak to and hand it to the secretary. At this time, we would also like to ask that if any member of the audience has a cell phone or other electronic device, that you either turn it off or turn the ringer to silent. If you need to take a call, please step out to the hallway so the meeting is not disrupted. Public hearing on item number 1, the approval of the March 10th, 2022 Zoning Board of Adjustment minutes is hereby opened. All right, Rachel made the motion to approve those minutes and Vince seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 2.
Good morning. The applicants are still working with their engineer on an alternative plan for this site. At the applicant's request, we recommend that this be continued to May 26th.
Okay. All right, Haven made the motion to continue item number 2 until May 26th, and Rachel seconded that motion. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. That's our final item on Zoning Board of Adjustment, so I'd look for a motion to adjourn. All right, Rachel made the motion and Mike Kwasny seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right, we're adjourned. We will now commence the Planning Commission meeting for March 24th, 2022. Again, if any member of the audience wishes to speak to an item on the Planning Commission agenda, you can fill out a speaker request form right over where the gentleman is right now and hand it to the staff seated on that side of the room. And if you didn't take my warning 30 seconds ago to turn your cell phone off or turn it to silent, please do so now. Items 1 through 8 today have been placed on the consent calendar and may be approved as a group. Action will be taken on all consent items in accordance with staff's recommendation by a single vote. Any item may be removed from the consent calendar by any planning commissioner, staff member, or audience member for separate consideration at this time. Findings of this planning commission are recommendations to the city council. The city council will make the final decision with the exception of the following item. Item 6. 21PD010. The Rapid City Planning Commission's action on this item is final unless any party appeals that action to the Rapid City Council. All appeals must be submitted in writing to the Department of Community Development by close of business on the 7th full calendar day following action by the Planning Commission. Are there any items 1 through 8 staff would like removed? Are there any items 1 through 8 that any planning commissioner would like removed today? And are there any items 1 through 8 that any audience member would like removed for separate consideration? The chair would then entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar items 1 through 8 in accordance with the staff's recommendations. All right, Mike Gallagher made the motion to approve, and Vince seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 9.
Good morning. This item is a major amendment to a plan development overlay to allow a Cirque show as an extended temporary use on an annual basis at Uptown Rash Rapid Mall. The applicant is requesting a height exception as part of this amendment. The property is zoned Shopping Center 2 with a plan development overlay. Future land use is mixed-use commercial. The property is accessed by Disk Drive, which is classified as a collector street on the city's major street plan. Shown here is a proposed site plan. A 120-foot diameter circus-style tent is proposed for the southeast corner of the site. The show will run from June to August, and the tent can seat up to 1,500 people. As mentioned, the applicant is requesting a height exception. This is to allow 50-foot towers in lieu of a 35-foot maximum. Staff supports this exception as the towers are needed structural supports and will not detract from the commercial character of the area. On-site photos, public notice was posted at the property. This is looking south along Maple Ave. This is looking east along Dis Drive and looking west along that same street. And staff is recommending that this item be approved, subject to the stipulations outlined in the report, which includes that a temporary use permit be obtained for each annual event and be limited to 3 months per year. And I'd be happy to take any questions the commission may have.
Thank you. I'll jump in. I don't have any other lights up. The temporary use permit, is that a function that's already offered under our current codes, and we're just seeing this because this is a planned development? Or-
Mr. Chair, you're correct. So the use would otherwise be permitted, but because this is in a planned development, they do have another area of the property that has already been approved for a standing temporary use. If you've gone to the mall over the last several years, there are times where there might be a car show or RV sales, or sometimes it's lawn furniture, and it's out in the southwest area of the parking lot. They had to go through a similar review for that. So even though this is a type of entertainment that we would want to see in this zoning district, because it is in a planned development, they're coming back through to secure a major amendment. And what we're saying in this case is we only want them to go through it once. So they can do this each year during the same time frame in the same operational plan. If we were to receive complaints, or if they were to want to expand or change that operational plan, then you would see it again. But beyond that, it's one and done.
Gotcha. Thank you. Mike Kwasny?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As Vicki mentioned, there are several events that happen up there. I'm a little concerned. I've gone to restaurants up there, and sometimes the parking gets kind of crazy, and this is taking a corner of that lot. I'm assuming they hope to be busy, and if there's 2 people, 3 people to a car, there's 500 parking spots taken up. Is parking a problem with this? Maybe Vicki's the one that can answer this.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
So we don't believe so. Right now, one of the issues with this mall is similar to malls across the nation, is trying to revitalize it, to give it new life, and it is under new ownership now, and we're anxious to be working hand in hand with them to see how they may master plan and really change up some of the uses within all of the property that they own. I think you're right that the parking from some of the restaurants does overflow into the mall parking lot, but never to the extent that the mall is short parking. And as you all probably know, there is additional parking on the north side of the mall that gets underutilized. So at this point, we believe we're going to be okay. As we see additional uses coming to the property, we'll continue to monitor the parking to ensure that that doesn't become an issue. It's a great question, Mike.
And I guess as we move forward, we're telling them that they can do this every year. Is there some stipulation that we can see if that parking is a problem? And if it is, I think we should relook at it next year to make sure that that isn't a problem that is long-term. That.
And that's where the complaint language comes into play. If we were to receive complaints that there is insufficient parking, but more importantly, as they expand those uses at the mall, and we believe that they will, we'll continue to analyze parking. So we can put it upon them. If you want these additional uses, you may have to eliminate some of your temporary permits. So it'll be some ongoing negotiations as we go. But at this point, we have excessive additional parking at the mall, and we believe this is a great temporary use. They may change that as their master plan comes forward and we see more permanent additional uses being added to the mall property.
my problem still goes back to what I'm reading is that that they can renew next year without having to go back through us. That creates a little bit of a conflict in my mind that we need to see what it does. And at the mall, I hope they do. I think it's great that they're trying to make that go. But if they have other businesses that end up in the mall and the parking does take off, have we created a problem by saying next year they can go ahead and do it? And I go again, next year's my problem. I think they need to do something, but
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
So remember, if we were to receive a complaint, and that could be staff initiated, you're going to see it again. And if they are to come in with additional uses, they will have to bring in a parking plan for each one of those. If those additional uses should trigger parking shortages, they either won't get to add the additional use, or they'll have to eliminate some of the temporary parking. So I believe, Mike, that we've got this covered. If there should become an issue in the future, we will continue monitoring it. We have the ability to pull these back and do a review with the Planning Commission if parking is a concern, or if the use becomes a conflict with some of the other uses that they want to add. And just so that you folks are aware, as many malls across the nation have experienced, they do own a lot of real estate. We are encouraging them and will be working with them to introduce additional uses such as residential. We see apartments in this area. We see an additional standalone commercial uses. So again, they do own quite a bit of real estate in this area, but you're going to see, we're hopeful, a total revitalization of the mall. And so at some point, all of their temporary use permits will probably go away.
okay. I guess that'll take care of it for now, but it's a concern, and I hope they do have success. But
Vince?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Got several questions about the duration. Why 3 months? Is that 3 months in a calendar year? When does the clock start on 3 months? And is there a specific 3 months, or does it have to be laid out ahead of time?
Yeah, the 3 months are from June to August. And from my understanding, that's when the show will be annually every year, is that June to August timeframe.
Mr. Chair, one of the things that Tanner didn't include in his presentation is a little description of what the event will include. So maybe, Tanner, if you want to talk about some of the history that they have with the area and the different activities that the programs will include.
Yeah, they have a business at Rushtown Mall that they've been at for 5 years, I believe. It's called Live It Up Studio. And they just recently did an event at Momentum last December that brought forward 1,500 people. So they are an established business and successful at running these events. I guess would be a brief history.
June to August, can that be changed, is what I'm asking. Is like, okay, I want to do June and July, and then, oh, August wasn't that good, or we don't think it's going to be good, and I want to move my last month to February or a different month.
Mr. Chair,
Vicki?
that's why the stipulation reads, if they were to change their operational plan, they would have to come back to you.
Okay, good enough. Thank you.
Haven?
Upon approval of this application, what limitations are there then to the use of this tent, the facility?
So the tent or the use could change. It would just go through that temporary use permit. Like Vicki has noted, if there's a change in operation, that would have to be a major amendment to the plan development and come back through Planning Commission.
Maybe that brings up, what is the use that they're intending to, for the tent?
Thank you. That's what I was trying to get Tanner to get to a little bit ago. So this is going to be circus-type activities, aerial acts, those types of things. That's what's going to be in here. And if they should change that use, change the operation of the temporary use, then Planning Commission is going to see it again. They held an event at our new monument, also known as the Civic Center, here, I believe it was in December, and that's the event that attracted 1,500 people. So it's well-liked by the community, it's well-organized, they've got history in how they perform. Setting up the tent is something that they're experienced at, and obviously anytime you set up a tent, the fire department will be on site. There will be security measures taken to ensure that it's constructed and installed correctly. So we've got a procedure in place that's required for any types of these temporary structures. And again, I think it will add an element of excitement at the mall, give families of all ages something exciting to do during the summertime. Again, if the months should change, if the operation should change, they'll be back before you.
And is the use limited then to the applicant, or can they lease the tent out to other people for different uses?
No, they cannot. The temporary use permit will be issued specifically to this applicant, Circus Productions. Great questions, guys.
All right, Rachel.
Sorry, this isn't really a question, just a statement, but I just want to say that I'm really excited that, you know, the Rushmore, well, not the Rushmore Mall, sorry, the Uptown Mall, so sorry, is getting more use, is getting more excitement. I'm happy to, you know, hear that it's a consideration to put housing there. I mean, we see malls all across the country shutting down, and it's just a waste of space, waste of money, waste of property, you know, waste of capital. It's really unfortunate to see that. So I'm very happy to see that the Community Development Department is working with business owners to reuse a space so that we don't have the same issues that other communities do. So just that.
All right, I'm going to jump in again. I don't mean to belabor the point. This is a big tent in a very windy area that's supposed to be up for 3 months. What's the plan? I mean, when there are 70-mile-an-hour winds, which probably will happen, is this thing rated to stand up to that, or what is the plan for that?
So we have building inspectors that are on site when these are being put in place. That's why they have to get that temporary use permit through building services.
Okay.
And certainly, this is an organization that realizes that there has to be daily maintenance on that tent. Fire department also will be on site when a structure of this size on a temporary basis is installed to ensure that all safety elements for fire protection are also included. So we've seen similar tents throughout our park systems, sometimes for weddings, those types of things. We've had some elaborate tents go in. And we've got a process in place that seems to be working extremely well. And certainly, we can't guarantee you that we won't get hurricane force winds, but it has to be rated. I'm sure those towers, our primary function is for stability. And that's why we are in full support of granting that exception, is to ensure the safety and stability of the tent structure itself.
Okay. John?
I'm curious, are they going to have any animals since it's a circus?
The applicant hasn't indicated there'd be any animals at this tent.
Mr.
And
Chair?
What's the footprint of what they're really renting? Is it just the space of the
It's
tent?
200 feet of clearance is what they're asking for. The
Around the
tent.
perimeter?
Yeah. Or that's with the tent and the cables. So 200 feet total.
Because I think they had animals at Monument.
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
So at this location, it's our understanding there will not be any animals. If there were, we would have a waste management plan as a stipulation. We'd want to see where the animals were going to be housed in between performances and whatnot, and it just doesn't really lend itself to have that part of the show on a 3-month basis. So at this time, it appears to be more circus acts with aerial shows instead of the animals. I'm assuming lots of clowns.
All right, any other comments or questions on item number 9? Okay, Rachel made a motion to approve item number 9 with the stipulations as noted. Is there a second to that motion? Mike Goller seconded that motion. Any further discussion on the motion to approve item number 9 with the staff stipulations? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 10.
Good morning. Item number 10 is an initial plan development overlay to expand an existing mobile home park located on South Valley Drive. You may recall that this item was first heard by the Planning Commission on January 24th of this year. There were some concerns expressed by the Planning Commission and several questions from the audience, and so this item was continued to allow the applicant time to take a look at their site plan, to hold a community meeting, and see what kind of changes could be made to the proposed operations, and then to resubmit the plans, allow for staff to review them and bring it back for you. So that's what we have today. I will go ahead and give an overview of the project and an update specifically on what they've changed with their plan. This is an aerial view of the site. It's 6.5 acres in size, located on South Valley Drive, south of Garden Lane. There are 14 existing mobile home units, 1 stick-built structure, and a garage, which is used for an office. Something that we discussed at the previous Planning Commission meeting was that several of these structures don't meet the current standards for mobile home park development in the city of Rapid City, and that's because it was developed into the county and annexed in. So it does have a non-conforming status. And through the plan development process, they receive what you could consider sort of a temporary exception for these structures to exist as they are today. However, as they reach their useful life and are replaced over time, they will be replaced in a manner that does meet all requirements for clearances, the lot area, and such as that. So that's where we have today with the development. What it looks like today, property is zoned medium density residential district, and in this district, mobile home parks are allowed through a conditional use. The future land use for the property is mixed use urban neighborhood, looked at the wrong color. And in urban neighborhood areas, you would expect to see various types of housing at different density ranges. The property is located along South Valley Drive, which is identified as a collector street on the city's major street plan. It is important to point out that this segment of South Valley Drive is not annexed into the city limits, and it is maintained by Pennington County Highway. Here's part of their first submittal that you reviewed at the last meeting. You can see the existing development as well as a proposal of how they intended to incorporate new units on the site. So this is what they were originally proposing, showing the existing non-conforming units and how they would be reconfigured over time to meet city standards. So at the last Planning Commission meeting, just to recap some of the issues that were identified, the condition of Garden Lane and concern about those 2 proposed access points that you can see here and here. There was also concern about traffic on South Valley Drive along here. We talked about the floodplain requirements that this property is located within the 100-year floodplain areas, and that drainage was a concern. We talked about the overall density of the development, and we talked about neighborhood disturbances that occur in the area. So since having held a community meeting with the neighborhood and coordinating with staff on further evaluation of these issues, they have revised the site plan, and here's what it looks like today. So just to summarize some of the changes, you can see they've removed access from South Valley Drive entirely, so there will no longer be any movement of traffic or cars from this development along South Valley Drive. They've also submitted a trip generation report to better understand exactly what the impact of the increase in number of units would cause, and their trip generation report identified less than 40 peak hour trips. As far as the floodplain goes, let's look at a map here. You can see the areas of the 100-year in blue, generally this area, and then the 500-year floodplain is in yellow. They will be required to obtain a floodplain development permit before they can actually construct this project as proposed. And that process looks at several factors. So as an example, they'll be required to have permanent foundations that are at least 1 foot above base flood elevation, and they'll also be required to anchor those buildings to those foundations. And what that does is reduces flotation, collapse, or lateral movement in case of water events. And so those are just some of the safety measures that are required through the Rapid City Municipal Code and FEMA requirements to ensure that mobile home development in floodplain areas is safe for those who live there and those who live within the area. There was also some concern addressed just about the overall density of the mobile home park. They initially were requesting approval for a total of 45 mobile home units and an office building. They've reduced that to 42 units, so they've reduced the number of units by 3. And those units were generally located here, here, and here, and that also created the opportunity to remove access from Garden Lane. The Rapid City Municipal Code requires a lot area of at least 3,000 square feet for each mobile home unit within a park development. And this development has a range of lot areas depending on the units. Some of them are larger than others, but they all exceed the minimum requirement. They range in size from about 3,200 square feet to over 6,000 square feet of lot area per unit. The applicant, as you may remember, is showing a 6-foot privacy fence along the perimeter of the perimeter of the property to provide some screening from surrounding neighborhood areas. That's something that's not required, but it's something that they are proposing with this development. They're also showing where they're providing landscaping, and in addition to that, sort of an open space or pocket park area within the development. We did coordinate with the police department to get an understanding of what the calls for service in the area are for this development as it stands today. They indicated that over the last year, they had 17 calls for service, and the applicant, in continuing to look at the operations of this plan, has submitted a community response action plan, identifying that a sign will be posted with the phone number for the management of the park, so that if there are any concerns from the neighborhood, they will have a way to address park management more directly, and also, of course, are encouraging that the police department get involved for any concerns that are about an emergency nature. Just to go through just a recap on some site photos that we reviewed from the last meeting. This is looking south into the development from Garden Lane. Of course, the access points that were previously proposed here and here are no longer planned, and there will be a loop that goes through the property like such. This is looking east on Garden Lane. I'm just going to actually pass over these Garden Lane photos because they don't really apply anymore. And this would be looking north on South Valley Drive. And this is the private drive that access will be taken from here. It's currently unimproved, but they do plan to pave it as part of this development. The utilities in this area are under the jurisdiction of the Rapid Valley Sanitary District. So as they bring forward their final plan development overlay, the specifics on the design and the engineering will be reviewed by the Rapid Valley Sanitary District in coordination with the City of Rapid City, but that's something that will come with the final plan development. So in looking at their revised plan, we note that they've made some changes and are continuing to meet the minimum requirements for mobile home park development. Staff recommends that this be approved with the stipulations that are noted in the report, and we are available for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Sarah.
Mr. Chair,
Vicki?
I also wanted to note that we do have a representative from the police department here. If there's any questions regarding the history of calls that they've received from this property.
I just have one question to start this off, since I don't have any other lights up. The private drive area to the south of this, or proposed improved private drive, I had a hard time telling from the overhead, which you've pulled up, is this a shared drive between the parcel further south, or is it a separate, are there essentially two private drives that are side by side there?
Rapid map, as you know, is not meant to be a survey, and it does appear that that lot line straddles the drive. But as you can see from this site plan, the drive itself is actually on this property. And so the improvements that they do will be on their property.
Okay. Haven?
It would appear then that there's just one access. There's a loop road inside the park, and then there's that private drive over to South Valley. What are the requirements, I guess, for ingress and egress in a facility this size?
That is a great question. So currently, our regulations say that you can have up to 40 units with one point of access. As Sarah indicated, there's 42 total, meaning that with what's there today, they're going to add 27 additional units. 6 of those units currently take access directly from South Valley Drive. Maybe Sarah can show those on that west lot line. So that leaves the balance of them, or 36 units, that would be accessed via that private drive to the south, and that does meet the city's regulations.
And is there any plan or requirement for the existing mobile homes here? I assume a lot of those don't meet current code requirements. Is there a plan to replace those, or are that only going to be required if something changes?
Yes, good question. They're not planned to be replaced immediately, but those structures will eventually meet the end of their lifetime, and when they're replaced, they will be replaced to meet requirements. So what you're seeing in this area along here is how those structures will be reconfigured as they're replaced.
All right, I do have a number of public comments. I should have noted that, but if, okay, Mike, same question. Do you want to?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The concern is, I have the same concern. I still see a problem with the access, but all those places that are existing, they're not on foundations, so they will, if there were a flood, these would move into existing trailers. I guess they're required to put foundations of sorts underneath the new ones, but the old do not have, correct?
So the city does require that mobile home parks get a registration on an annual basis, and I think I'll direct that question to the fire department as to whether the existing existing units are required to be anchored. Or
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Chip?
Yeah, we do inspections on all the trailer courts, mobile home parks, and it's required by ordinance already that these trailers are supposed to have tie downs, hold downs for security, so that for wind or flood. So we'll talk with the mobile home park, make sure that they're inspecting on their half too, to make sure that they're tied down properly.
So we will be following up on the existing to make sure that they were right. Okay.
All right, well, if Vince is okay, we'll move to the public comment. Cody Champion, if you'd like to come up. All the folks speaking, if you could identify yourself once you're up at the microphone for our minutes, we'd appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm Cody Champion. I live on Garden Lane. I'm a mobile home guy. I've been involved in every facet of manufactured housing that there is for 46 years. So in one sense, I don't have a bone either way. My main concerns here today, and I'm going to ask you guys a question, everybody in here. Back in '72, how many of you spent any time searching for victims after those fateful days? Raise your hand. How many? Not one of you. Nobody was here to search. I don't know if any of you were even here for the recovery in the months following. If you were there, Those sounds, those smells never leave you. I spent a lot of time doing it. So here's the thing. A fair portion of this is in what you call the flood zone or flood hazard zone. Now, when you say flood hazard, and that's kind of an upgrade from flood zone, that's an engineer's way of saying, I'm smarter than Mother Nature. I got news for you, he ain't. In fact, in '72, or the aftermath, when we created the floodway or the greenway, if this area had been in the city limits, none of this would be a problem right now or in existence, because it would have been cleared out and made into a greenway, as it should have been. And about, I'm going to say about 30, 35 years ago, there was a proposal by the city to do just that. I saw the plans myself. And I can't remember the guy's name that showed them to me. I know we didn't get along very good at the time. So when it comes to developments, I'm against anything in a flood zone, period. I don't care what it is, because I've seen what happens. And developers, for the most part, have one main concern. That's their bottom line. So you have to be really careful when you look at all these plans and at their end goal. So I would like you to very much consider this part of it. This is safety, this is lives. One of our neighbors, old Bob Haskell, could tell you some real stories about that. How many people that he pulled out of those trailers and had in his house, which is up on the corner of South Valley and Garden Lane. It wasn't a pretty sight. And when it comes to developers, there's one thing I would like you to consider. Take into consideration just how much smoke they're blowing up your skirt when they just make a proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Champion. Joe Maylander.
Good morning. My name is Joe Maylander. I'm the lead engineer on this project. As described by city staff, our request today is for the approval of an initial planned development application to allow for the addition of homes at the Kennedy Manufactured Home Community on South Valley Drive. The reason for this request is the community has seen a lot of demand for housing, and this project will provide 27 new home lots. A lot of my presentation kind of reflects what Sarah just said, so I apologize for that. But the 6.5 acre property is located on the east side of South Valley Road, directly south of Garden Lane. There are 15 existing homes in the community, and the 27 new lots have a minimum area of 3,200 square feet, which exceeds the city's minimum requirement of 3,000. Some of the lots are sized to allow for larger homes, with the maximum lot size exceeding 6,000 square feet. Most of these larger lots are positioned around the perimeter of the development. Homes on the perimeter of the site will be set back 25 feet from the property line per city code. A new private road is planned to loop through the site and connect to the existing access on South Valley Drive. There are no new connections to public streets proposed with this revised project. The private loop street will have a minimum pavement width of 24 feet, which exceeds the city's minimum pavement width of 20 feet for public local streets. Each home lot will have a parking pad on site that allows for 2 cars, and then there are an additional 15 guest parking spaces included with this expansion, and that also exceeds the city's requirement of 11 guest parking spaces. As mentioned, there was a vehicle trip generation report that was completed for the site, and with the addition of this site, it's expected to produce 17 trips in the AM peak hour and 24 trips in the PM peak hour. So a pretty minor, negligible increase to traffic on that road. The site will be landscaped per city code. There are 16 evergreens, 25 medium trees, and 3 small trees are planned. The majority of the landscaping will be placed around the perimeter of the site to provide screening And then there's also a 6-foot privacy fence proposed on the north, east, and south sides. As mentioned, there is an open space included for a future park area. The addition will include new utilities throughout the expanded area. The site is currently connected to the public sanitary sewer system, and the expansion will be as well. Water will continue to be served by that system, and then a stormwater detention basin will be designed to meet city stormwater requirements. I do want to thank staff for the time that they've put into this and the multiple reviews, and we appreciate their support. Thank you to the Planning Commission for your time and consideration. I hope you see that with these revisions, we have attempted to meet the neighbors' concerns, and I'm here for questions if needed, and thank you.
Thank you. Stephen Klotz?
Hello, my name is Stephen Klotz. I reside at 2726 Garden Lane. I am directly across the street, across Garden Lane, from this proposed development. I'd like to start by telling you about a new book that's out. Just coming out. It's called Thorns and Roses. This is written by Don Barnett. Don Barnett was the mayor of Rapid City in 1972 when the flood occurred. Read you this little quote. Sunday evening, 48 hours after the beginning of the flood, the council voted to take the first steps to prevent future mobile homes from relocating near the creek. This decision became the heart and soul of the massive recovery. This is an excerpt from his new book. I'd like to talk to you for a moment about the land values. There's a disagreement with the people that are developing this property and property owners out there, myself specifically, about what this will do to the values of the existing properties, or single-family residential homes. They reference a study done by Lending Tree. Lending Tree is an organization which is in the business of selling loans. They do a lot of financing for mobile homes. And they say nothing in this study that I've been able to find, nor they related anything to us that tells us that they will not negatively affect our property values. They cite things like, well, mobile homes are going up, at a faster rate than stick-built housing. It has no bearing on that issue. The whole statement is self-serving. I found it repeated in a number of different places, all for companies that are involved with mobile homes, selling, lending, etc. Okay? I also want to tell you another thing about this land value, or about the value of our properties. Real estate appraisers have a certain set of principles that they're required to follow. Now, one of these principles is called the Principle of Regression. When I lived in Illinois, I was a licensed real estate broker. I also did appraisals. The Principle of Regression states, the worth of a greater valued object is reduced by association with many lesser valued objects of the same type. In this case, the type is housing, and they are about to put, and I know you've said 27, excuse me, but I look at that and I count 30 new ones. At any rate, they're about to put those right across from a single-family housing development, and that fits exactly the definition of the Principle of Regression. That means that what they're doing is going to lower my property values. Who's going to compensate me and the other property owners out there for their loss. They're not. They've said that. There's also a concern as far as the, excuse me while I find the correct, there it is. There's also a concern with quality of life. And the developers here have responded to that. It was raised up at our community meeting. I'm going to read to you what their reply was. Consideration should be given to how this will diminish adjacent homeowners' quality of life. Their response: it is important to keep in mind that the proposed development does not require a zoning change, and the adjacent homeowners' preferred view of the landscape does not negate the landowner's right to use the property as they desire. These people tell us they want to be good neighbors. Guess what I feel like I just been told? And I probably shouldn't say it in a public meeting. My windows in my house, and I live in a split foyer house, as do most of the people on that street. The bottom of my windows is 8.5 feet off the ground. I stand in my living room, look out over this property. My eyes are 11.5 feet off the ground. What do you think my view is going to be in the future? I get to look down on the roofs of 30 mobile homes. Is that what you would want? You think that won't affect my property values? I'm pretty sure it will. Let's see. Ownership of this property is something that they had agreed to disclose, but they've decided not to. Okay? So let's see. That's at least one promise that's been broken. Wonder how many is going to be broken in the future. I guess in closing, what I'm going to tell you is these people will make bad neighbors. Most towns in America, and this, by the way, is a quote from Frank Rolfe, who is a partner to, at any rate, he's a partner in Impact, okay? Impact is the people that are responsible for this development, okay? He's quoted in a magazine article as saying, most towns no longer allow mobile home park development inside of their city. He also says a couple other things in this article about how it why you should not develop a new mobile home park. And one of the things is it affects the homeowners. It really, really does. These people are not going to be our good neighbors. They're from out of town. They're from out of state. They don't care about us. They don't care about Rapid City. All they care about is the money. Bad for us, bad for Rapid City. I'd like to take just a moment here also to say thank you to Sarah. Sarah has been wonderful as far as leading me to access information that is publicly available and help me determine what I think should be done in this area. So, Sarah, thank you. You deserve a thumbs up. All right, that's all I got.
Thank you. Go to Jay Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to keep mine a lot shorter. I'm going to stick to the facts. Here we are 2 months later, where I stood last time in front of you, brought up some of the issues. I brought up the crime. I brought up the traffic. More importantly, I brought up about the flood. I told you about my neighbor who's lived there since the 50s, how there was dead bodies and stuff floating by in that whole area. We cannot allow that anymore. And one thing I want to talk about on the good neighbors part, I had a nice talk with the chief here about a month ago. I don't know what they tried cherry picking for calls of service, but for law enforcement, calls of service last year to this whole area was 265 law enforcement calls last year. And that is just with the existing mobile homes that we have there. Now they want to add more. Their manager that they had gave us her cell phone number, said if we have any problems, get a hold of her. They just had one of the mobile homes broke into and the door kicked in. I watched it for almost a day and nobody did anything. Called the manager of the mobile home park. She never did call me back. I finally called 911 law enforcement. They showed up. They looked at it and said, yep, the door had been kicked in. Never heard any more about it. But that's the kind of issues we're having. If they want to be good neighbors, instead of promising us rainbows and sunshine and everything else, they got years worth of cleanup to do on their existing area, getting rid of some of the mobile homes, getting rid of some of the drug dealers and the problems up there. Why not fix all the existing problems before they want to come in and put something new in? So that's all I have to say. Thank you. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you. Dottie Kruthoff? I apologize. Names are a struggle.
Like my son in high school said, his nickname was Crouton because nobody could ever say Krutoff, so they called him Crouton. So, but anyway, yeah. They're going to argue the police
What was
thing.
your name?
Oh,
sorry.
Dottie Krutoff.
Yep, for sure.
And I live at 2403 South Valley, directly across from trailer number 14, which had a severe drug problem, lots of traffic. I made several phone calls. No, I did not give my name, but I did work with that, Deputy Dupree. She put in a undercover car with a camera in it for a week. She got some good stuff off. I've worked with Marco Glass. He's personally been in my house. I've had other police officers in my house doing stakeouts to catch this drug traffic that was going on. The best thing that happened out of all this so far is that the manager of the court, she's not here no longer, but she got rid of them. And let me tell you, my neighborhood right in front of my house has been quiet, except for one other issue. That would be lot number 15. A guy just moved in there. Supposed to have been a girl, but it's a guy, and I think he has some mental issues. I have security footage of him leaving his premises at 3:53 in the morning, completely deranged, in nothing but a pair of snow boots. It don't even look like he has pants on, no coat, and he's moaning and groaning and cussing all the way up the street, and he didn't show back up at his property for a week, and I'm assuming that he was put into a psych hold. He left his front door open for hours. I did talk to the court manager about that. She went and checked it out. She shut the door, and that was that. So yeah, police-wise, y'all probably don't know me, because when I do call, I call, I don't want my name out there because of what my son told me one time, and it scared the bejeebies out of me. He goes, Mom, you're going to be one of those people that go to Shields or Cabela's, and they're going to be waiting for you, and they're going to shoot you because you've reported all this drug traffic. And there was a lot of drug traffic out of that trailer house. I've got pictures, I've got surveillance, I've got everything. That doesn't mean it won't happen again in this trailer court, but I do thank you for getting rid of that problem. My dog don't bark nearly as much as she used to because of all the door stuff. Now, I've lived there for 27 years. The first 10 years of living across from that trailer court was great. We knew everybody that lived in there. They were all awesome people, older people, younger people. My son played with several of those kids in that neighborhood. It was a great neighborhood. Then the last 10 years, we've had anywhere from, in just one trailer house, the parents sold it to their teenage son, and he turned it into the boar's nest. We would have lawn chairs sitting on top of the entryway, and they'd be up there drinking, having a good time, speeding up and down, just crazy. They finally got rid of it. Then they sold it to another gal who ran her own private little thing out of there. Won't say what that was. And then we got the drug house. So the last 10 years have not been pleasant. I hardly ever went out my front door. I spent most of my time in my backyard. Since they got rid of the drug house, we still have had at least 3 police calls to the first 3 trailer house, 14, 15, and 16. And I see them. I mean, my front window faces it. I see the cops going by with their lights on. Most of the time they don't have lights on. So we still have a little bit of issue with the cops showing up over there. So, you know, they've got the existing 14. They want to add another, what was it, 27, 30, something like that. I'm not sure. But anyway, eventually those trailer houses are going to get run down too, just like what we're looking at now. I agree with Jason. They have plenty of work to clean up Park because they bought everything from the bottom to the top except for Orchard Lane and maybe one other property, Melody maybe, I don't know. But there's plenty that they could do out there to get rid of the crap that's out there that we have to look at as neighbors. We got annexed into the city. The first year you guys raised our taxes 30%. The next year it was over 20. Then it went up another 18. This year it went up substantially. And if I have to look at all these trailer houses, and we plan on keeping our property forever, until I die, it'll become my son's. I don't want to look at it anymore. And I don't have any other thing unless I pick up my whole property and go back out in the county further. Because we loved it when it was the county out there. We haven't gotten city services. We got 7 streetlights, but they didn't put them where they were needed. They took them all up on top of the hill at the trailer court, which I guess is okay for them, but it wasn't good for me. Because I would like to see a little bit more of what goes on, but I do have plenty of cameras at my property just for security. And I never used to have to feel like I needed that. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Pat Jones?
Good morning, Chairman, Planning Commission, City staff. Thank you for allowing me to speak this morning. Pat Jones, 219 Cleveland Street, Rapid City, South Dakota, here in my role as Ward 1 City Councilman. This area is in Ward 1, which is my area of specific representation, and I've been involved with it for quite a while. Was brought into it by concerns of the residents in that area about issues going on, their concern, everything that you've heard so far. My concerns as a policymaker like you revolve around some very specific issues. Yesterday, I met with a gentleman named Todd Burgett. He gave me his card. He's identified as Vice President of Impact Communities. He came to Rapid City for this meeting today. He called me and asked me to meet with him to hear what he had to say about his company and the project and to hear my concerns. And so we had a conversation. And I shared with him what my concerns and many of the residents have been since this began, and I'll just try to briefly go over those. First of all, we still, in a lot of ways, don't know exactly who we're doing business with. When this was introduced in January, representatives of the company stood at this podium. The name of the company that was listed in the agenda was not the name of the company that was talked about. Questions were asked, well, what is the name of the company? The representative who stood up here said he didn't know because it had been sold. And so there's confusion there as to who we actually are doing business with. Who is accountable for this project should things go sour? That's vital that we know that. As a city, if we're going to grant them the permits to do these things, we need to know who we're doing business with. That message has been inconsistent, in my opinion, throughout the entire process. There was a public meeting held at a local hotel several weeks ago where the residents in the area received a letter inviting them to come, and I was notified of the meeting, and I attended that meeting. And one of the representatives of the company told the people in attendance that it was their job to find the solutions to the problems of the development of the trailer park. Now, the folks that live in that area, in my opinion, it's not their job to solve the problems for the company that's going to make money off of this project. And I thought that was rather pretentious of them to tell the residents, well, you need to find the solutions. It's your job to find the solutions. If they're going to do a project and make money off it, they should be the ones finding the solutions and trying to work with the residents instead of telling them, well, you need to find the solutions. Many residents that were there were vocal, loud, and it turned into a shout fest. And that was disappointing because nothing very good happened at that meeting. Pardon me. It has been mentioned about local response and who to contact. That has been a problem for some time in that area. Who to call if there's a problem. Phone calls aren't returned, things aren't handled on the site, and with the track record that's been in place, there's a high level of concern as to why will that be any better with the addition of 27 or so new units. Simply posting a phone number doesn't cut it. There needs to be action, there needs to be a response for these folks who live in this area and have to deal with the concerns that are already there. And again, I stress already there because very little has been done to take care of the blighted areas in and around the current trailer park. As was mentioned by the lady that was up here before, they own a great deal of land in that area. And it's one of the worst blighted areas in our city. Yet very little has been done by the ownership to address that. Now, people are coming in from the four corners, from Impact and Tara Kennedy, MHP, 2 LLC, which is kind of SOL in my opinion, to come to want to make this happen. Well, where have all these folks been when this large portion of our community has been going downhill and suffering? The track record, in my opinion, is poor, and to allow them to expand and do more, I think, is extremely risky. At this public meeting that was held, it was mentioned that this will meet the need for affordable housing in Rapid City. Affordable housing is a great buzz term that lots of organizations and lots of people use. Sarah taught me what affordable housing actually is. In a nutshell, 30% of your income, right? Very good. You've taught me well, Sarah. And so affordable housing for me may be totally different to someone else. And so I asked the question at this public meeting. I said, well, how much will people be paying for these trailers? And the answer was $500 to $600 a month. Well, on the surface, that sounds great because the city is doing projects with developers and builders and others through the TIF process and other methods to work with them to have them build a certain number of low rent, low cost units when they're building apartments and things because of the need for $500 a month rent, $600 and so on. So the city recognizes that, and we are actively involved in doing that. So then my follow-up question was, does that include the lot rent? No, it doesn't. How much is the lot rent? $500 to $600 a month. So this project is going to cost these people $1,000 to $1,200 a month. So for them to promote this as affordable housing, low-income housing, is not true. They're saying it's only going to cost people $500 to $600 a month, but they're leaving out the part about the lot rent. I asked Mr. Burgett yesterday about that, and he said, well, we're not trying to mislead anybody. It's just we only answer the question of how much is the payment, and they don't include that in. They said they will provide that information if asked. Well, you know, a sin of omission is still a sin. So to say this is low-income affordable housing is misleading in my opinion. And we never would have had that information if we wouldn't have pressed to get it. So don't let that sway your opinion thinking, well, we're going to be providing low-income housing for $500 to $600 a month. That is not true. by the words of one of their employees, it's going to be $500 to $600 a month for the trailer, $500 to $600 a month for the lot rent. During the meeting, they were asked about street width and parking. How wide will the streets be? Will there be parking on the street, or will there be places to park off-street inside the development? And they weren't able to answer the question at that time. Arguments took place between one of their staff members and people in the audience about what the street width should be. And, well, you know, you don't know. No, I know. And it became loud and pretentious and unprofessional. Very disappointing. The residents who live in that area have not been treated very well. And again, if we knew who we were dealing with, when I go to McDonald's and I buy a hamburger, I know I'm dealing with McDonald's. I don't know. There's impact. And I asked Mr. Bridgette to explain this to me. And he was very good at explaining things and saying who's involved. There's a guy named Dave who is kind of the top of the heap, who owns hundreds of these parks, developments, etc. And then each one apparently has its own name, LLC with it. And then there's a management, Impact is the management company that manages them. And then he said there's hundreds of investors who invest in different ones. So I couldn't get to my satisfaction, because I will eventually be voting yes or no on this at the city council level. I couldn't get an answer to my satisfaction as to who's responsible. Who are we dealing with? As a city, we have to know that. We receive complaints about absentee landlords and this and that. And so if we're going to allow something like this in a floodplain, in a dangerous area, when there's been a track history of poor performance, numerous law enforcement calls, we have to have more clarity. And I shared with Mr. Bridgette, it's like everything that could have gone wrong has been checked off so far on this project. I feel for the people on South Valley Road. I've been on the city council 2 years now, and concerns in that area have probably been 75% of the work I've done on city council, just because of their concerns and issues out there. And they're valid and they're real. You know, they got a raw deal from the county, they got a raw deal from the city when they were annexed. Services have been slow to come. The lady talked about 7 streetlights. What we went through in the last year to get 7 streetlights out there was like a kidney transplant, I think, would be easier than getting 7 streetlights out there. But we're working on it. And I appreciate their diligence and their communication with me, because they're good folks out there. But they deserve to be treated with respect. And everything that's taken place to this point, in my opinion, has not been respectful to them. It's just been a plow of these folks coming in, and I'm sure these are good people. They work hard, they do what they do, and they're most of them are probably very good people. But like my mom always said, it's not what you do, it's how you do it. And the how has been poor, in my opinion. And so in my role to represent them and their needs and what we believe is in the best interest of the city, I do not support this project moving forward. I think it's been problematic up to this point and will continue to be more problematic. And unless something very, very big were to happen, there's no way I will support this when it reaches the city council level. So I wanted to make sure that my opinion was shared, and it's not just the opinion Pat Jones, the guy. In my role on the city council, that is where I'm at on this topic. So thank you for listening to me, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Warax.
Morning, and thank you for listening. I'm Bob Warax, Warax Excavating. I'm a contractor here in town. My father-in-law lives out there on the corner of Garden Lane and South Valley Drive. He's been there 55 years. He doesn't have a problem with things. A lot of the homeowners lately, I noticed, have been talking to him. He's a very confused kind of guy. I don't want these people bothering him. Another thing I wanted to mention, I live in a trailer house. And what I'm hearing is, if we build more trailer houses in this little park, it's going to be a lot of bad things happening. You have bad things in your neighborhood, a police department shows up for an ill call, someone ill, all of a sudden, oh, geez, there's the cops down there, and, big problems all over again when it was a medical emergency of some sort. This kind of thing I've been hearing is just really bugging me. I live in a mobile home. My kids live in a mobile home. They're good kids. I'm a good guy. I just don't like the way I'm hearing things about mobile homes. You build a trailer house in there, oh, it's a crackhead. He's a drug dealer, whatever. I'm just getting really tired of it. People need to look at this. I don't know if you want to call it affordable housing or whatnot. It's a nice little development. I don't think it's going to bother anybody. The things I've been out there around my father-in-law for 35 years out here. I don't see the problems except for just a couple of bad apples in one part of this trailer park. Well, the bad apples, get rid of them. I don't have a problem with that. But everybody else that lives in that trailer park, don't look at them like they're bad. Don't look down on them because they live in a mobile home or it's an old trailer park that needs some work. I think everybody needs to look at that part of it. These people, they need places to live. They can't afford a big home in a big development. This is kind of something that I think needs to, go on. I just don't like the disrespect that I'm hearing from people that live in mobile homes. That's what I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Todd, and I'm not going to try the last name. You'll just have to introduce yourself, Todd.
Todd Berger. I'm from Michigan. I work with Impact. Been there almost 15 years now. I wanted to kind of address, first off, Bob, absolutely right. People are what we're about. And it's not about where you live, what type of house you have. We're all people. We all deserve a right to have a good, safe place to live. And he's absolutely right. So we have to kind of take out, well, you don't look like me. Well, we don't want these people over here because they don't look like me. And that's not, we want to get away from that. This should be fair for everyone to be able to buy their own home. As far as I wanted to talk just to address some of, I'll try to keep it to the 3 minutes, but who are we? Who owns this? Who owns that? This is owned by an LLC, SDRC, Tara Kennedy, MHP LLC. That's the owner. That's the entity. Dave Reynolds is the primary agent for that ownership group for that particular property. As you guys know, it's to keep things safe for liability. Dave Reynolds and Terry own Impact Communities. That's the management company that run the mobile home parks that Dave is all a part of, but not everybody wants to be, they're not all actively working. It's just an entity that puts the money in, that buys the property. Impact Community then runs the properties, but it's owned, and it's been owned since the very beginning of time. It's a legal entity, so that doesn't have anything bearing on anything that we do. As far as what Mr. Jones said on the pricing, okay, how much is it? What's the average rent around here? I think a one bedroom is around $950 a month. Our lot rent is $475. If somebody needs affordable living, and by what you said, I think Sarah, and what you said, Mr. Jones, 30% of what your living wage is, if you're making $30,000 a year, that's $900 a month. That's right in the range where we're at. The lot rent is fixed at $475. If somebody comes in and pays cash for a home, which they can very well do for a brand new home, it happens all the time with us, their payment's $475. If they have to finance the whole thing, then they may pay $500 or $600 on their home. They can simply rent the lot rent or the lot and bring their own home on. It's hard to say what it's going to be. So there's a variable there with it. I don't think anybody was trying to be misleading. It's just hard to say how much is it going to be when we don't know how much the home is that's going to be on that lot, how much money they put down, or what have you. So just wanted to kind of address a couple of those issues. Keep my time to the minimum here. I know we're going long. Appreciate your time, but as Bob said, we're all people, Everybody has a right. We're zoned the way we're supposed to. We're not asking for zoning to be changed. We're just trying to do everything that's required by law, which we've met and exceeded all those expectations by the property use of us being the owner. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Des Moines Whitworth, and again, if I am mistaken, please correct me.
You said it correct, thank you. Hi, Des Moines Whitworth, Impact Communities. I just wanted to offer some clarification on Impact and our company and what we do. Todd touched on it briefly, but basically, Tara Kennedy Mobile Home Park is a business. It's a single, standalone business, and which many mobile home parks are. There's investors, there's owners, and some want to be involved and some don't. So for those investors or owners that don't want to be involved, they contract a management company to step in and manage the day-to-day business. That's what we do. That's who Impact is. And we sign an agreement with those owners or of those businesses that make us accountable for the day-to-day actions. So we are, Impact Communities would be the responsible party and who you would contact in the event that there was an issue that needed to be addressed. So we've explained it so many different ways. I don't know how else to communicate it, but basically that what we do is we accept the responsibility and we become accountable for the day-to-day at every one of the communities that we are under contract to manage. Okay. One other thing I wanted to mention is when we had our meeting, and Mr. Jones here spoke about we expected the residents to come with solutions, and that wasn't at all the case. What we asked for was their input. My years of experience has taught me that if someone's not happy with a situation, the best thing you can do is say, what would you do different? What suggestions do you have? What ideas can you bring to the table? Maybe let's try to work it out. Maybe the solutions I come up with are not the solutions they want. That's the purpose of that meeting, was to sit together to say, I heard your concerns. What do you think would be a workable situation? If that's asking for solutions, that wasn't the intent, but wanted to just clarify that. Affordable housing. First of all, no one ever brought up the term low-income housing. When I mentioned affordable housing, my intent with affordable housing was compared to the cost of a single-family stick-built home in Rapid City, which is currently averaging about $261. So when I say affordable, I mean affordable compared to what you can buy a stick-built home for in the city. Low income has never been an issue or a topic with us. We don't even participate we grandfather in tenants. If we purchase a property who have housing for low income housing assistance, we will grandfather them in, but it's not something we implement in our communities. And as those low income tenants begin to they move out or their situation changes, we don't move additional ones in, right? We maintain the contracts that are already in place. The utilities, we charge back for utilities, water, gas, trash. On average, it's about $45 a month. Our lot rent is $475, so we're at about $5.25. And then whatever their home payment might be, that's not something we don't typically rent. We have rented, but we don't typically rent. We always do our best to make the residents in our communities homeowners. There's pride of ownership. They have more incentive to maintain their home because that's their investment. And that's our motivation behind home ownership versus rentals. And not having the constant turn of people in and out of the community. And Dottie, I'll do respect here. Dottie made a comment about a resident leaving, and he was clearly deranged, and he hadn't come back, and so he must have been in a mental hospital. I just want to say that those are all based on assumptions. There's no evidence behind those statements at all. None of us really know what the situation is. So just to be clear, we can't assume anything that, and communicate things that we don't know for certain. So that's all I've got. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, Vince, thanks for the patience. You're first up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank all the speakers for coming forward to presenting their thoughts and concerns and ideas. And I have multiple questions because I don't believe we have them all answered. And I do understand everyone's concern. And so, full disclosure, I understand that here in Rapid City, we brought in one of the largest lenders of manufactured housing in the nation, and we had that company here. I'm familiar with that company. I've spent many days on the phone with owners of these homes, and they were in dire straits, usually, and I had to deal with them, and they're right. That the gentleman is right, they're people. We need to be careful how we address who lives in a manufactured home or a mobile home. We want to be very, very careful. So please let me start off, and first of all, I want to thank the police department for being here today. If I may just follow up on some of those issues that were brought up earlier, and I'd like to follow up if I may. And I do have also questions that Mike brought up about our floodplain and the way we have to set up the set that up to make sure that those homes are protected and they're not going to have the least amount of effect on them, any flood that may or may not hit. So my question is, I noticed that in the write-up it said that there were 17 calls in a year to that area. Can you kind of help us or describe what those calls were and how they were handled, please?
Same request of you. If you could identify yourself once you're up, we'd appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Vidal, and thank you, Chair, for having me speak. And obviously, when I speak, I want to give all due respect to the people who have shown up, taken their time out to come here and address this commission. And I think that shows good community involvement and support. So I just want to say that. My name is John Olson. I'm a captain with the Rapid City Police Department. So in regards to the 17 calls for service, what I did was, and as far as the whole area that's involved in South Valley Drive, I didn't pull all the numbers for all the calls that would happen in that area. What I pulled the calls for was just that trailer park. And so when I pulled those calls for service, over the course of just 1 year, I wanted to make sure that it was valid to the, a certain time frame. I can go back as many years as I wanted, but talking to Sarah, she's like, well, just tell me what has happened over the year. So maybe even 2 years ago, maybe we had more problems with, say, a drug dealer or someone doing nefarious things in there. I don't know that. But what I can tell you over the course of the year was we ended up with 17 calls for service. And out of those calls that I pulled, I'll kind of just go through and name some of the calls we had. And like I said, this is just for the park itself and not for the surrounding areas around it. We had 5 civil calls out of the 17, which have been a civil process being served to somebody, and for whatever reason the civil call would happen. 3 medical calls. We did have 1 warrant subject that we tracked down and arrested. There was a hit and run, another crash. And then we followed up on another call where somebody was involved in another call for service that whoever the party was had ended up in that trailer park from the other end of it. And then we did have a mental health call. And so we've had, those are kind of a laundry list of the calls for service we had over there, and I'm not going to name any names or addresses, but I will tell you that it came from that trailer park itself.
And as far as response time, would you consider the police department made it to those calls in a proper response in a proper time?
As far as I know, I didn't look up the call times and call. What I would say is from our police department, and your police department is we'd like to be able to be there between 5 and 10 minutes. I'm not going to say that always happens. If you have some major incident happen, a stabbing, shooting, major crash or something like that, sometimes it's going to delay us. But we have specific units that are designated to be south of town, north of town, downtown, and so we do the best we can, but like I said, we'll do the very best we can, and if it's unacceptable, I would want to hear about it. I am in charge of all the uniformed police officers in the Rapid City Police Department, and I'm okay to hear about it. I want to know. But we're definitely trying to make some strides in getting our response times down and continuing to hire and do all those things as well.
Right. And also, you made an offer just now to meet with the residents in this neighborhood at any time to discuss these issues. Am I correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, and like you said, when you were talking about the potential or possible drug dealer in there, those are things that we want to help with the best we can. And it sounded like that we did help, and I'm glad to hear that. But we work closely with the sheriff's office as well, and being that we're very close in jurisdiction with them, especially in that area, having turned it over to city from county, there's been probably some growing pains as well.
Mr. Chair, that's my questions for the police department, but I'd like to retain the floor because I do have some other questions in other areas, but I don't want to stop anyone here on the dais who may have questions for our police department.
Anybody want to jump in with Captain Olson? Mike Kwasny?
Hi, Captain. How are you?
Good. Thank you, sir.
How do those calls compare to another area? I guess I'm just trying to wrap around because I think we have a lot of calls that you probably go to, and maybe you have areas that you feel are more of a concern than others.
I would say if I was going to consider this, and like we're talking about here, this is a pretty low density area as far as this trailer park itself, when I have much higher density trailer parks throughout the city. But as far, it's very minimal on my concern level. It never hits into like, we need to do something right now. It's never been on my radar. Keep in mind, I did work as a South Side lieutenant. I was a lieutenant for many years before I became a captain, and now I'm back in patrol as a captain. It's still not on the radar. It wasn't when it was first annexed, and it's still not. So, not that, and like I said, that's nothing against anybody here that has witnessed things and seen it themselves. But as far as from a police statistic, like a comp stat type of, it's just not on the radar.
Okay, and that's the question I have. I know that there's a lot of things that you guys deal with, and I thank you for that.
Thank you.
So that's my concern.
Anyone else for Captain Olson? If not, I think Vince, you've got it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir.
And I want to thank Councilman Jones for being here today, too, to present information that was not available to anyone except for himself, and he laid it out pretty clear. One of the points that he brought up, and I'd like to make a point of it, too, is that as the speakers came to address, you asked them to identify themselves by name and address. Some of them did, some of them didn't. And to Councilman Jones's point is that we still don't know where some of those folks live that came to that dais. Now, the local folks that lived across the street made it pretty clear where their address is and where they're from, and others didn't. That causes concern for somebody like myself, because we want to know who you are, and we appreciate you being here, but if you're not willing to give us your address, even your business address, the Councilman Jones's point is that who are we dealing with? So I take that into consideration. The other thing, and if I may, and this will be my last issue, I promise, and that is we talk about the floodplain. There couldn't be a more serious issue that we need to face, and because we have a gentleman here that left that actually was part of the recovery effort for that 72 flood. I was in high school at the time. I was a sophomore, so I can appreciate it, the efforts that the folks that had to live through that and had to deal with it. It still is a memory, and we have part of our museum is part of that story that is ongoing. We don't want to forget it, but there are rules. And I just want to make sure that we understand, because if the adverse effects on the property is the subject property is located within the 100 to 500 year flood and federally designated floodplain. As such, a floodplain development permit is required prior to the issuance of a building permit. The floodplain development requirements for an expansion of an existing manufactured mobile home park, or home park, I should say, manufactured home park, are codified in Chapter 15.32 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. Examples of requirements include, but are not limited to, anchoring and elevated permanent foundations, and I believe that was one of the questions we brought up earlier. And how are we sitting with that, with meeting those requirements?
Sarah?
I'll defer that question to Public Works.
Todd?
I believe our certified floodplain manager, Mary Bosworth, has been working with the applicant on as far as getting the information to them. It is required as part of the building permit, so it's not required to have that in place now. I don't believe they have that now. And as far as the discussion on the floodplain, I should point out that the floodway south of this property is what restricts any buildings being in there. Being this is not in the floodway, buildings are allowed just as long as those provisions are met with the floodplain development permit.
Todd, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay, so Mary Bosworth, our certified floodplain manager, is working with the applicant on getting information to them, and that permit is required prior to the building permit, so it's not in place now. They are aware of that obligation, and that this development is allowed because it's not in the floodway. The floodway, which is south of here, restricts development such as buildings and stuff like that, but this is not in the floodway itself, so that's why we're okay with this.
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
Just a short explanation from a non-engineering perspective. So we have 100-year floodplain. Within that floodplain, we've got an area known as the floodway. Within that floodway, as Todd indicated, no development can occur. Within the flood fringe, which is where this property lies, that's commonly referred to as the 100-year floodplain. That's what we all think of it. You can develop, and we have many, many properties throughout our community that are in that flood fringe area that can develop with a floodplain development permit. And depending upon the type of development, depending upon the specific elevation of that property, those elements of what is going to be required to ensure safety and anchoring changes. And that's why we have a floodplain coordinator. If they go out to cut in the streets, the internal roads, that requires a floodplain development permit. So it's something that our floodplain coordinator will work with this developer on each step of the way. When it comes to the building permit stage, where they're putting the manufactured units on the property, then again, that same coordinator will engage in that review as well, as does the fire department in their inspections, as does building services as they're issuing those permits.
All right, Vince, that take care of it. Okay. Rachel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There were, a couple of comments that were made that I kind of wanted to go back to. Mr. Warax, I wanted to go back to what you said. You're absolutely right. I hear a lot of anti-mobile home sort of sentiment, a lot of, they're not in single-family homes. We got to watch out for homeowners. And I feel like if you're a mobile home owner, you are a homeowner. It doesn't matter if it's stick-built or a mobile home, you own a home. And I don't think that we should prioritize homeowners over people who can't afford to buy a home. Everybody needs a place to live. So there's that kind of concern, and I hear people talking about, well, the property owners need to clean it up. I don't understand how you can clean it up without actually developing. So that's kind of another thought that I'm having. Of course, there's the comments about the 1972 flood. I wasn't alive then, so I couldn't have helped to clean up. I am reading Mayor Barnett's book right now, Thorns and Roses, and I have gotten to the parts where he's talking about people trapped in mobile homes, and it is truly horrifying and appalling. And certainly nobody up here or nobody in the audience, I don't think anybody ever wants something like that to happen again. But I was wondering if Public Works can probably maybe give us some historical understanding. And I know this is a little bit of a stretch because you don't really have history so much as engineering, but maybe a little bit of historical understanding of how requirements have changed for both building in floodplains or the flood fringe, and also requirements for mobile homes, how that has changed in the last 50 years. Is that asking too much?
Todd, can you take a stab at
Probably
that?
is asking a bit. I wasn't born back then either. My understanding is that the mobile homes back in the 72 flood were in the floodway themselves, and that's why a lot of the casualties that happened is because they were up against the creek. So the greenway tracks that we purchased was floodway property, not floodplain property. As far as how the rules have changed, I don't know how they've changed in the past. Currently, a mobile home in the floodplain, the finished floor has to be 1 foot above the base flood elevation, and so this area does have a base flood elevation established. So as a part of that permit, once those mobile homes are in place, I'll have to verify that they're 1 foot above the base flood. And then there's flood openings like in the crawl space or the area below the finished floor of those units. There's typically what's called flood openings, but beyond that, I don't know how things have changed historically.
I don't know if any other community development members can help with my question. I know it's a big ask. We're talking about the history of engineering.
So, yeah, I was around in 72, just not in Rapid City, but it is a well-made point. Regulations have changed over the years. I don't know the specifics as to what it was required for getting a building permit. And remember, back in the day, this was all out in the county. I'm sure that their regulations didn't look at that either. It is important to note that as a result of the 72 flood, when FEMA came in and did a massive study of our area, we then locked down floodway versus the flood fringe. And there have been improvements upstream to assist us if we should ever have another rain event like we had in 72. In addition, we have acquired greenway tracks that do not allow this type of use at all. We are getting better. I truly appreciate the concerns from those that are concerned about loss of life if we have an unprecedented rain or flood event. And with our environment these days, we can't sit here and promise you that that won't happen. But what we can say is that the development as proposed will be required to meet the floodplain regulations that are in place today, and the flood regulations do allow for the development of this project at this location.
Thank you, Vicki. And then I have another question for Todd. Are there any differences in, if you have a stick-built home in a floodplain versus a mobile home? Are there any differences in the requirements for building in that 100-year floodplain?
I'm not sure. The 1 foot above, I think, is pretty common. You have to get insurance if you don't meet that floodplain insurance. If there's an existing home that doesn't have that 1 foot above the base flood elevation, then you would believe your mortgage lender would typically require you have insurance for that.
Okay. I think that kind of covers my general questions, but Vicki, I wonder, and this is kind of an aside, but I wonder if sometime we could have someone, because, the 72 flood and building in the flood zones and things like that are a common, concern that we have. I wonder if we could have Mary Bosworth, if she would be available sometime to give us a quick staff presentation on, what she looks at when she's determining if something is considered safe or not by FEMA standards and other standards.
Mr. Chair,
Vicki?
we will extend an invite to Mary and Brandon Quiet, both. They both are very knowledgeable about the floodplain regulations, not only in Rapid City, but federal regulations as well, and see if in one of our later agendas, we can't get a presentation brought before all of you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, Haven.
I'm concerned about a lot of the issues that have been raised that I think they're very valid issues, but they seem to be kind of outside of the normal scope of the Planning Commission, whether it's police involvement or nuisances. Hopefully those things can be seen to by other departments, and like I say, it seems like it's outside the scope of the Planning Commission. I note that this property is about a block or two north of Rapid Creek, but between this property and Rapid Creek, there are numerous mobile homes, and the floodplain issue to me is a very serious issue. But we've already got a considerable number of mobile homes in that area, and I guess maybe just the question I have is they're applying to expand the mobile home park. Well, what other uses of the property could there be? It would seem like with the current mobile homes that are on this particular lot, that expanding the mobile home park is somewhat or is consistent with the land use around this area.
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
An answer to that question, Haven. So this property is zoned medium-density residential that does support higher-density residential development. If this weren't to be developed as an expansion of the mobile home park, it could be subdivided and create single-family residential lots, similar to what's in the neighborhood. Each one of those would have to be 6,500 square foot in size. But it would also support an apartment development. What is the acreage of the undeveloped area? And again, my point being is that's a pretty large expanse. It would support a fairly high number of apartment units contingent upon sufficient parking being provided. That could potentially be a 3-story structure with a commercially designed parking lot and X number of units depending upon what that acreage is that we're looking at in the aerial right now. So those would be some example of uses other than the mobile home park.
Mike Kwasny.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rachel, I thought those were some great questions and suggestions there. I appreciate what you brought up there, and there were some of those that I wanted to also have brought up. I think, Vince, you brought up some great things also. The accountability, I think, is part of the thing that we really need to look at, and I guess we have accountability with everybody that has a home. You know, I know I was here during the 72 flood. I happened to be in high school, just finishing high school. So I did see it. There were homes that were destroyed, not just mobile homes, but homes. There were cars that were stacked one on top of the other. I lost people that I knew. So I do understand the importance of controlling our flood areas. And I don't know if this trailer park built properly is any less or more a problem than a homes or an apartment building or whatever. I think if the steps are taken to do proper things, then it will hopefully help in the end. A flood is a disastrous thing. a hurricane, a tornado, or there's a lot of things that are weather-related that can cause disasters. So I think it's important that we just take the steps to make sure that things are done properly, and that's what Planning Commission is here for, is to help make that happen. And our people, Vicki and her staff, do an amazing job of trying to help us follow those guidelines. So I appreciate very much that. I just don't, I'm concerned we don't have the homes that are there. Is there a time frame that they have to fix those? I don't think they do. I think if it's something that's there, it's just a matter of time before they burn, before something happens that it's no longer livable, and that's what we got to wait on, correct?
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
So we have a legal nonconforming section within our zoning ordinance that says that if it is a legal nonconforming structure and design, and in this case, that's a yes to both of them. Some of these mobile homes would not be allowed in the city limits today, and they don't meet separation and design standards. They don't have individual patios, they don't have individual storage lockers, so they're grandfathered in. At such point as one of them would be replaced, then that specific location, that specific space, would have to meet current requirements, both for structure and design. If the unit became uninhabitable, then again, it would have to be replaced or removed, and anything replaced would have to meet that design. So there is always a ceiling on how long those legal nonconformities will be around. When it's a brick and mortar building, that can be decades and decades. Typically, mobile homes and manufactured homes, we see those being resolved in a more timely manner, just because the structures don't have the same life as the brick and mortar.
Okay, and then I guess the last question I have, the parking was brought up, but I'm assuming each one of these have their own parking space. Is that right?
Mr. Chair? Yes,
Sure.
each unit has parking for 2 cars, and they've also provided 15 spaces for guest parking throughout the site as well.
Okay. It would be nice, and I know that we've been told before that we can't require, but a nice park in this area would be kind of nice to have, but it would be something that...
Just as a reminder, they actually have identified the location of a park within this development.
Okay. I may have missed that. Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
Fire Department, you have a comment you want to add?
Yeah, Mr. Chair. I just want to let you know for the good, Project Impact, or that group that manages these, has improved some other parks in the city, you know, when they take over management. This particular park had 8 violations last year, 8 lots. When we go through inspection, and then by the end of the fall, all the violations were taken care of and addressed. And I just want to let you know we've always maintained contact and know who to contact on these trailer parks or mobile home parks. So just to clear it up, we know who to talk to, and if there's any issues, you know, please contact, you know, the fire department, and we're, you know, we can talk to the people right away. So
Great, thank you. John here?
I'm just a little bit concerned. Why are we allowing 42 units when 40 is the maximum for one egress area?
Perhaps we could get Sarah, there we go, pull up that aerial. So 6 of the units are not included in that count because they have direct access onto South Valley Drive. 36 of the units will have access with on the one point of entry, as Sarah's showing on the graphic. So they do not exceed the 40 unit limitation based on 6 of them having direct access onto South Valley Drive.
Okay, thank you.
Haven?
Personally, the suggestions that Vicki had for other development here, either single-family homes or an apartment complex, would be more desirable in my opinion, both of which I think would be perfectly legitimate business uses. However, I don't think it's our position here to decide how the property, or to insert our personal opinion as to how the property is going to be used, as long as the applicant has met the requirements of the city.
Rachel?
Totally forgot what I was going to say.
We'll go to Mike Quaz.
Thank you.
I missed one question. There was a fence mentioned on 3 sides. Where the road is, where does the fence go as compared to the road? Will it fence in the road?
No, the fence, it's probably unclear on the resolution of the screen, so let me draw it here. The fence is shown in this area. No, sorry, my marker's not working there, but along there.
Just note that along Garden Drive, that fence has to stay back from that right-of-way a minimum distance of 10 feet, so it doesn't create any issues with visibility down the street. The other lot lines are identified as internal lot lines with adjacent property, so that fence can be right up against that lot line.
Okay, that brings up, and I think it was Haven that brought this up about the road. I don't remember who it was. So is there a separate road for the houses on the other side, or access?
Access for these units actually is just taken directly onto South Valley Drive.
I'm actually talking to the
south.
Oh, to the south.
If you go to the aerial.
Excuse me.
So there's going to be, where the orange line is there will be a road to the north of that? Is that where the road is going in that they're putting in?
Yep, they're showing pavement of this private drive along in this area right here.
Okay, so then to the south of that orange line, there's another road or access?
Sarah, if you go to the graphic that doesn't include floodplain, I think it's a little more visible. We actually discussed this at our team meeting too, this very topic, to ensure that those properties to the south would continue to have access as well.
Okay, so what we're seeing there is that they actually do have access, separate access. So we're going to have 2 entry-exit points right there?
No, those on the south, Sarah, if you could show their access point that comes in south of their structures and then veers to the east. No. So we're talking about these mobile homes right here. This is designed where this is their access. There's even a driveway over to this structure here. Again, Rapid Map is showing a little bit off. That lot line is, I'm the worst one at drawing on this screen ever, but that lot line is really about right here. So when this was developed out to the south, they had to show that all access was internal to their property as well. It will not be landlocking any of those properties.
Okay. So where do those properties then further south, how do they come out? They must come down and go to South Valley at some point, I'm assuming?
Correct. Unfortunately, we don't have a graphic that extends that far south.
Okay. Do these people know that they're losing the northern access point? Or has that been addressed with them?
It required notification to the property owner, but again, probably that's one individual and not those that lease the spaces. But again, you have to notify everybody within 250 feet of this property.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And if I may,
Mr. Chair.
Just wanted to point out from this site photo, so the access, those properties to the south don't use this for access. There's a fence there now that restricts access from this private drive. So they're not losing access.
Go to Rachel.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, this isn't what I wanted to say, but we're getting dangerously close to 9 a.m., so I want to make a motion to extend the meeting past 9 a.m.
Second. All right, Rachel made the motion to extend our meeting past 9 a.m. Vince seconded that motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you, Rachel.
Yeah, so what I forgot earlier, I was wondering if we could have impact kind of address in more detail the concerns about being able to be contacted and having a local presence, because I understand I've worked with contractors before who are from out of state. Lots of contractors here are from out of state. The amount of construction we have exceeds the number of companies that we have here. So I don't think there's anything unusual about being from out of state, but if you're actually operating like a property management sort of situation, I think it's important that everybody is able to actually contact you.
Yes, I do want to actually address who we are.
And yeah, if you could identify
I'm
again.
sorry, my name is Michelle Gomez. I'm the district manager, and I'm actually from Boise, Idaho. Mostly raised there, but born in Florida. Don't hold it against me. I really do want to address who we are as Impact. Dave Reynolds is my boss's boss's boss. Todd is my boss's boss. Des Moines is my boss. Todd is from Michigan. Yes, Michigan. Des Moines lives in Texas. I, again, live in Idaho. I am the district manager, and I manage Wyoming, South Dakota, and Idaho. So I have 14, I believe, communities that I manage with community managers. On a local level, I'd like to introduce you to Janine Maskovich. She's worked with us now for 3 weeks, and she's killing it. She introduced herself to our residents by handing out violation notices. She is now the manager of this actual mobile home park and another one we have out on Sturgis Road. Amanda Goodmanson is, I forced her to move here from Utah, which I also used to manage, and she's the community manager down at Silverleaf, which I am going to pat myself on the back here real quick. We have cleaned up Silverleaf, which I believe is the old countryside and deluxe mobile home parks that were previously owned by Cynthia. We've cleaned that up tremendously. We're working directly with Dan. He has my personal cell phone number and is not afraid to use it. Anita is our old community manager of this particular mobile home park. She lives in our mobile home park. She's now the assistant at Silverleaf. And Lori, sorry, don't want to forget Lori, she manages Wheel Estates out on Howard. So I do have a local presence here. We have 4 community managers, 1 assistant. I have 4 full-time maintenance guys that live in town. We are local. We are. We have a great team here. And we also have a great team out of state. I visit often. I also visit Wyoming often because I have a great team there too. Des Moines also manages places in North Dakota and Texas and other places I don't have room. And then Todd just oversees us all. So we're not just a company. We're actually people, and we're here on the local level, and they care just as much as residents, as much as you guys. We do care that we're here, and we do want to make this a good place for people to afford to live and take care of their homes. We sell these homes because we want pride of ownership, and we have policies and procedures in place to do that. When we took over, for example, Silverleaf, my first phone call was to the police department and I met with Dan several times, and he gave me his violation. It was his violations to me was a book, and I said, done. Give me a year. And every time I talk to somebody about Silverleaf, and I know Silverleaf is a different park than this one we're talking about, but every time I talk to somebody about Silverleaf, they said that used to be the best park in Rapid City. And I said, I guarantee you that it will be again. And that's kind of my philosophy, is I do want to clean these places up, and we will. We absolutely will, but we can't do that. These are brand-new homes we're going to be putting in this park, in this addition, and it will make it look better, and we will be replacing the ones that are currently there as they come to term. But it's important to me for you guys to realize that we do have that local presence. This is who we are. These people sitting right here. I forgot about Tim. I'm sorry, Tim. He's our senior project guy. He's from Michigan too. I'm sorry, we're all over. But this is us. We're people. It's not just a company. This is our team. And you guys do have people on the local level. I know Darren Saucy at the police department has my cell phone number. Dan has my cell phone number. Nobody's afraid to use it. And we are addressing things. The one home at this mobile home park, I was unaware of the issue. As soon as I found out about it, we took care of it. Amanda at Silverleaf has gone through 15 evictions of who we believe are problem people, and that's how we're cleaning that place up. So we're doing things. I don't want you to think that we're not. And we are here, and we are present, and we are aware. Does that answer a little bit?
Yeah, that does help, because, all I was hearing is, it's out-of-state people, they're hiding behind an LLC. I mean, look, like everybody hides behind an LLC. Block 5 is an LLC, and people are super excited about that. So, that doesn't really concern me, but knowing that there is a presence here, that there are people who live here who are dealing with issues that can be contacted, to me, that's night and day between what I have been hearing. And I have missed, the first meeting on this, so, I appreciate I'm missing some of the background, but no, that does help. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Vince?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for finally clarifying that. That's what I was looking for. I'm glad you were listening. Thank you. And because I know you're there, and again, like I said, if, we have one of the largest lender of manufactured housing in the nation here in our city. So it's important to understand that these projects, they need to be dealt with fairly, and I think the staff has put together a really good plan regarding that. The last thing I wanted to mention was in January, when we brought up some of these issues that the residents rightly brought up and justifiably brought up, they were answered. You answered them. Yes, we want those. So there may be some issues that still need to be thought through, and I'm sure those local residents are going to let you know. But we have a different decision to make today. But from what you're promising, I'm taking you at your word. You're going to work with those local folks, and you're going to have a great plan and a better park than it has been.
All right, I have a couple lights up from the planning staff.
I was having trouble getting this one to light up, so they're both me. I just wanted to remind the Planning Commission that this is an initial plan development, not a final. This is just conceptual, so we've gotten a lot more information than is otherwise required as a part of this application, and in part because of the concerns with the neighborhood. Planning Commission, if this item is approved, and if it is appealed to council, and the decision is upheld by council, then the applicants can proceed with the final. Final is where we're going to get full design. We're going to get the floodplain information, the actual street design, stormwater quality areas, detention called out, water capacity identified, again with sewer usage, what that looks like, etc. Internal lighting, what is the details of the playground equipment? What does that fence look like that's going to go around the perimeter? All of that will be a part of that final. I think that accountability is probably one of the main concerns that we've heard from the neighborhood, and I would encourage the applicants that if they do succeed in securing approval of the initial and they proceed to the final, that they lay out a very detailed and system for addressing concerns, complaints, not only for the residents outside of this development, but also for those that live within the development, so that there is accountability to ensure that items are getting addressed as quickly as possible. And we'll be looking for a full detailed plan of what that looks like when the final comes in, if it gets to that point.
All right, thanks, Vicki. Mike Kwasny.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I have one final comment on it's important that the community stay involved in anything that happens. It's important that we look at things to get the end results, to make our community better. And that's truly what we want. It sounds like from the fire department that there is accessibility to the group impact, so that's an important part. I appreciate that Impact stood up and gave who they are, what they are, and that they are a part of our community. And that presence is so important to make accountability happen. So I thank everybody for all their input in what came in today. So thank you.
All right, Vince. Okay. Vince made the motion to approve item number 10 per the staff stipulations as listed. And Mike Gallagher seconded that motion. Is there any further comments or discussion on the motion? Rachel?
Yeah, I just wanted to parrot what Vicki said, that I think no matter what we decide, we're going to see this again in City Council. One party or another is probably going to appeal, so.
All right, any other comments on the motion? No. Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One thing I just wanted to bring up again, and it seems like it might be getting lost. Part of the conditional use on this is with the approval of the neighborhood. As you have seen for the last 2 months, the majority of us are against this for a lot of different reasons. And I understand from Vicki that we went through this with KTM about up there at Johnson Ranch, where they could build apartment buildings and do 3 floors and have this, shopping and stuff on the main floor. I asked 2 months ago for you guys to drive out there and look at this area. Every year where that bridge is down there, it floods pretty much every year down there, and we lose access to the south. We only have access to the north. Right now, if you look, St. Pat is shut down from right there at South Valley up to Highway 44 because they're putting in box culvert and lowering the water line. We already have a traffic congestion problem. Another thing that wasn't brought up today is we still have a county city issue with that South Valley Drive. That road is in terrible shape. It's not being addressed by anybody yet because of money and budgetary issues. As far as them doing the redesign was brought up because of us, because we're the ones that brought to you guys and said, look, Garden Lane doesn't support an entrance. There isn't wide enough, the road isn't finished. We're still out there plowing our own roads because the city and the county can't get along. So now you want to add more problems and more traffic, and I know they came up with a traffic study and said 17 and 14, but I don't believe that's factual. Our area is increased with traffic so much more now because of St. Pat being shut down that it's just been a nightmare. And I just wanted to bring that up again and ask you guys, we got messed over with the annexation. We were forced in it. We didn't want it. We tried not to get it, and our stuff wasn't listened to at that time. So I just want to ask you guys to think about what we're asking you as the neighbors. We're the ones that have lived there. We're the ones that have put the time in. This is a new group that comes in. They want to do an expansion, but what's wrong with cleaning up the existing problems prior to doing an expansion? You want to be a good neighbor and do that. Show us first that you're going to be a good neighbor and you're going to stick to your word before you get to do an expansion. That's all I have, so thank you.
Thank you for that. It's a good comment. I try not to have any soliloquies up here, but we have a lot of areas in our city like this where we consider a particular property here at Planning Commission, and there are regional issues around that property, and it's a struggle. It's a real struggle. We would talk about Red Rocks is served by a 2-lane road into our city, and there's thousands of people out there, and we can't solve that at Planning Commission, unfortunately. That needs to be the county and the city getting together to solve it. I hate it, but your neighborhood has the same issue. We have the county and the city, and are not solving the bigger issues in that area. And unfortunately, we're stuck with concentrating on the property and not the bigger issue here at Planning Commission. Vince?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to refer to Vicky's last comment. Please understand, this is preliminary still. We're putting, and I understand, and I appreciate your comment, that the past should be considered, and thank you for bringing it up. But this group also has made some promises to you, and I'm going to hold them to it. So thank you.
Haven?
And to clarify then, Vicki, this is the preliminary. The final will come back before the Planning Commission, is that correct?
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
So if the initial, and I think just based on today's discussion, we can assume that whatever action is taken by Planning Commission is going to get appealed to council. So about a month from today, council will hear this item if it is appealed. If council supports the initial, then we will see a final plan development with full detail. If council doesn't support the initial, then they have to start over with a new land plan for this property.
But my question, I guess, will the final come back before
Yes.
the Planning Commission?
Yes.
All right, motion on the floor is to approve the initial plan development with the 14 stipulations as noted by staff. Are there any other? Stephen?
Mr. Chair, just so you know, we have another meeting waiting to start up as soon as we're done.
Gotcha.
Okay, this won't take long. Who owns Tara Kennedy LLC? Impact agreed to supply Tim with that information. They have not. We know who Impact is. We know that, you know, Dave Reynolds and Terry Reynolds owns Impact, and there's a partner there, and, you know, there's actually quite a bit of information on that. Who owns Tara Kennedy? Mr. Hare, you spoke about they've made a lot of promises, and you're going to hold them to us, or hold them to it. They made one to us, and they've broken it already. Who owns Tara Kennedy?
Thank you, Steve. So every time we take an application in for review, either administrative review or an application that comes to the Planning Commission, we check ownership. We check who, if it's not an individual, who is the business entity that's licensed with the Secretary of State of South Dakota to operate and manage that business. In this case, SD Tara Kennedy, MHP, the authorized agent is Timothy Hayes, and Timothy Hayes is who signed the application to bring this application forward for your review.
All right. Other questions or comments on the motion on the floor? Everyone clear on the motion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. The initial plan development is approved. Vicki, staff items today, discussion items?
Not today.
Okay, any planning commission items from the planning? All right, John made the motion to adjourn the meeting. Mike Quasny seconded that motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.